Welcome to my economics channel, where I love discussing the topic, but most importantly, I love to make something fun and interesting to learn. And to that end, we're going to ask ourselves the question, why are graphics cards so damn expensive? Of course, all other chips are also really expensive, and the price for most computer components have indeed gone up, but I want to focus on graphics cards, just to hone in on a very specific example. And so for example, the RTX 3080 has an MSRP $699, but can go for up to $3,000, $3K in the market. What the hell is happening here? So I want to use this analysis, and I want to go over here. I want to use supply and demand. I want to use, and then, talk about shortages, surpluses, all that sort of stuff. I want to use that analysis to hopefully illuminate the issue. And for all of this, I'm going to be relying on a video made a couple of weeks ago, or maybe even over a month ago now, done by Linus Tech Tips, and in particular the WAN show that he did. Well worth listening to. In particular, he talks about how he's spoken to people in the industry, and the people in the industry have given this information to him, and he's going to talk about it now. And so with the caveat out of the way that we have to trust what he said, and we have to also trust the people that spoke to him as well, that they were telling the truth. With all that out of the way, what the hell is going on? Okay, first and foremost, we have a classic story of undersupply. So what happened was, come let's say February/March, last year, 2020, the coronavirus hits, or more accurately, it starts to have more of an impact on the economy. Hit in like September or something the year before. That's when we knew about it. And so what happened was, the big companies, Nvidia and AMD, there's really only two, those companies, they have to put their orders in advance for the fabrication makers, or the fabs, to make the chips, to produce the chips. And they foresaw that when the coronavirus came, there'd be a drop in demand. Demand would go down, and so they didn't have to put in quite as many orders, because there's no point in having oversupply in the market. There's no point in producing them if no one's going to be buying them. What they didn't foresee was that only a few months later, demand would start picking up again, and much more rapidly than they initially thought. So what happened was, they put their orders in, and these fabs, they're running at nearly 100% capacity. There's just simply no way to increase capacity, and so these orders have already been put in, and so come maybe even May last year, maybe May/June, demand starts picking up again. People are buying way more computers, but the undersupply problem is still there. Then of course we have the increased demand. I've got home buyers here. I don't mean people buying homes. I just mean people, just what you might call retail people. You and I, we're buying more computers. So what's happening is, yes, demand went down initially, but people, and of course there's also the stimulus money, stimulus checks that went out, and the stimulus measures all around the world. People are staying at home and they're buying more computers. Where previously you might have one family computer, forgive my my writing there, one family computer, now you might have two or three. And you might even have more, you might have one computer per family member. Each one of those computers, of course, has a graphics card. And, also people are just playing more games. The amount of gaming time people are spending has massively increased. And that requires more graphics cards. And, that's why I put the example of the RTX 3080. The surprising story is that the miners have not actually, at least according to what Linus was told, done that much. It's not actually, they're a nuisance, and you got some miners buying up a lot of graphics cards, sometimes into the tens, 20s, 30s, or sometimes even in the hundreds at once. But in the overall scheme of things, in the overall market, miners are quite a small segment of the market. And so it's not the miners that are pushing up prices. We also have here inability to increase supply. So of course that comes under undersupply, but there's, manufacturers, they can see this massive increase in prices. They can see this undersupply, but with the fabs running nearly 100% capacity, there's no way in the short run to increase supply. And in fact, it could be years before supply increases to what it should be to get the price down to MSRP again. We also have this phenomenon of sticky prices or sticky MSRP. We have this $6.99 MSRP, which is stuck the entire time. That has stayed the same. Meanwhile, the market is saying, that's a bit too low. We're willing to pay $2,000 to $3,000. And so this phenomenon helps us easily compare prices. We can easily compare the $3,000 to the $6.99 and say that's too expensive. There's something wrong in the market. Whereas if the MSRP was able to rise, we might not get quite as many problems. And we might just see it as a fact of, they have to raise prices due to all these other factors. But because of the fact that we can easily compare these two prices, you can go on eBay or any other seller, or many other sellers, I should say, and you can see a price of $3,000, whereas, $6.99 MSRP. But with this preamble out of the way, let's actually go into the analysis. So what's happened here? We have our market equilibrium. This is previously. What's happened here is come pandemic, and indeed it stayed much longer than people anticipated, was demand has come out. So we have demand coming out here, and we have a new point. Because remember, supply hasn't increased. So I guess we'll just keep it here, and that's your price increase. So somewhere from here to here. So we have a situation where supply cannot increase, demand has gone out. So more people are coming into the market. There were always rich people that you and we were competing for to get these graphics cards. But those rich people are now interested in buying graphics cards. And they're willing to pay more than, if we say this is $6.99, and if we say this is $3,000, they're willing to pay the $3,000. It's interesting to ask so this is the new quantity people are purchasing. Does this represent a shortage? And in particular, all of this entire line is taken up by scalpers. So scalpers are often using bots, purchasing at this price or at near this price. They can see where the market is heading and they're able to sell at this price, and this is simply scalpers. If MSRP was allowed to go up to here, we wouldn't see scalpers in this market, because the only people benefiting from this market are firstly the new people who are willing to pay this high price, but also scalpers. It's not Nvidia or AMD. It's these people who we don't particularly respect or like. But it's worth asking ourselves, is this a shortage? Is this a market failure? Market failure. And I put a question mark there. So we'll actually go over to the side here, and we'll go over to my prepared slide, and we have a market failure slide. So let's bring up black. So this is for whatever and however it is derived, we have a market price. We have people working together, or maybe not collaborating, but collectively. They've decided this is the market price. So let's look up here first. So we have, I should label these. We have supply, and we have demand. So let's look at this example first. Let's say this is what people demand. Whatever product this is, people are demanding here, but this is the supply. We now have a surplus. We have a situation where the price is up here, whatever price that is, but it's above the market price, and that's in anticipation for the shortage. And we have people saying, you know what, whatever product this is, we actually don't think it's worth this price. We actually think it's worth it only this price down here. And this is where we get our surplus, this entire area. And for a real world example of this, we have many crops where the government actually supports people selling certain crops, and they want those people to earn a higher price than the market price. And the market price might be the world price, which is too low, or they perceive as being too low, and the government is willing to support these farmers. And so the farmers, they're producing out to here and they're getting paid. But what's happening is, and we have famous examples where people, the farmers, they're burning crops simply because no one wants to buy at this price. This is too high. People want to buy down here, but they're essentially getting paid to burn crops. So we have this surplus. And so that's one real world example. We come down to here. And so once again, we have supply is down to here, and we have demand out to here. And we have a shortage. as a real world example, we might have rent control, where the price is not actually allowed to rise to the market price. And so demand is all the way out here, but supply is only it's constrained here because no one wants to supply anymore. Because is our graphics cards down here? Is this graphics cards? And we have our question mark. Well, this is MSRP, and once again, this is market price. This is, let's just say, eBay, which stands in for the market. We don't actually have a market failure here. We have MSRP, we have Nvidia and AMD selling down here. If they don't allow themselves to raise the MSRP, or more likely the market doesn't allow them to, there'll be a lot of bad press if Nvidia and AMD try to raise their price. So they release it at that price, and people demand all the way out to here. What's happened is, this is where the scalpers come here and they create the market. They increase the supply and demand all the way here, and this is how we're getting this market price. More specifically, this is how we're getting this equilibrium. There's this is quantity down here. Quantity increases out to here and increases the size of the market. All these people can now purchase, because remember, people are demanding all the way out to here, but at the very least, this is one way we can clear the market, because you and I, we want to buy at this price. We're more than happy to, but we drop out of the market, drop out, and this is the new market clearing price, or what we might term market clearing equilibrium, because the market failure only happens when people who are willing to pay, and they have the ability to, of course, they can't get something. That's where you get your shortage, but now they're actually able to. And yes, of course, that prices out you and I, we miss out, but that in itself is not a failure. You might see that as a moral failure or some sort of other description, other failure, but it's not a market failure. And just by way of example, we can look at the short-term situation as essentially being linear, sort of vertical, I should say, a vertical line where supply cannot increase in the short run. And so what happens is demand increases, demand goes out, and all that shows up is in higher prices, because supply simply cannot move in the short run. And that's the situation we see here. I just thought I'd show it like this. It's actually interesting to ask ourselves, what is going on with what Linus Tech Tips is calling the Verified Actual Gamer program? And that's basically where they bought up a bunch of, just for example, 3080s, but they bought up many other graphics cards as well. I just use these as an example. And what they're doing is they're selling at or near MSRP. And so what they're doing is they're buying at higher prices, but then they're willing to subsidize people to buy at the MSRP. How can we visualize this as a way of example? Well, there's two ways to think about it. One is that we have the market price here, and then we have MSRP. One, we can think about Linus Tech Tips as reducing demand, or essentially reducing the overall size of the market down to around here. Oh God, forgive that line, Jesus. Okay, that's a better line. And he's lowering the price, and Linus Tech Tips is willing to eat this out of his own money. He's willing to subsidize you. This is the subsidy. The rich people who don't particularly care about gaming in particular, they can't participate in this market. It reduces the overall, along the same supply curve, because supply itself is not increasing. He's not creating these graphics cards. He's simply buying ones that are already existing and then selling at that MSRP. But there's also another way we can look at it. He's actually increasing supply. I guess I should have done that before, supply prime. But he's only increasing supply, once again, for a smaller size of the market. Demand essentially hasn't changed in this scenario, but he's increasing supply for, once again, a smaller size of the market. The market was like this, but now, only for Linus Tech Tip fans, the market is like this. And once again, he's willing to eat this. This is once again the subsidy. And this is how the program is working. Well, it's a visualization of how his program works. But finally, to finish up with, we're going to ask ourselves the question, and because this was asked in chat while Linus was doing the WAN show, should Linus buy from scalpers and then subsidize, do the same thing essentially and subsidize gamers? And he asked this question and people immediately responded and said, no, all you're going to do is you're going to encourage the scalpers. And the analysis would agree with that, because individual scalpers, don't influence the market themselves. All they do is they see a price, they see at or near this eBay price, and they see the MSRP, and they see a chance to make a profit. Of course, this is all profit. And then they're willing to buy this and then sell at the higher price to other people. It's scalpers working together which are helping jack up the price, which are helping create this new market, because, demand is all the way out to here. And all Linus Tech Tips would be doing is sort of agreeing with the scalper, saying, yes, this is a good price, because the scalpers themselves, they don't know who's buying from them. They don't know that it's Linus Tech Tips buying from them and, selling it at MSRP to other people. And they probably wouldn't care if Linus Tech Tips is willing to buy from them, all the better. I'll simply buy up more and sell to Linus Tech Tips. And so individual scalpers, they don't influence the price. All they do is they see the price, and if Linus Tech Tips is going out and adding to people who are purchasing at this price, at this market clearing equilibrium, to use a technical term, all he's doing is reinforcing this market price. If people got out and if people weren't buying at this price, the scalpers wouldn't be able to sell at that price. They'd have to keep lowering their price, keep lowering, etc., until they got closer to MSRP. But I thought I'd finish up on that. We'll go to here, and we'll go back to here. And so, just by finishing up, this is why graphics cards are so damn expensive. We have this unanticipated increase in demand. It just wasn't foreseen, and demand has stayed and has increased over all this time. It's not the miners. The miners are just too small a part of the overall market, and they're not influencing the price all that much. Where scalpers are willing to come in and they're willing to sell at this price because people are willing to buy at this price. The scalpers themselves are not creating this price. They're seeing the price in the market that people are willing to pay, and then they're willing to supply. They're willing to buy at this MSRP, which once again is sticky, where collectively we're not allowing these companies to raise their prices, so scalpers are doing that for us, or for the other people who are willing to come into the market. And of course there's this inability to increase supply, and as Linus was saying, it could be years before supply increases. But that's the end of this episode. So once again, this was using the analysis given by Linus Tech Tips. I hope this graphical analysis helped illuminate the issue, helped answer some lingering questions. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask below and I'll do my best to answer them, or I'll compile the questions into another video and answer them there. But thank you for watching. If you wouldn't mind subscribing, that would be amazing, as it helps my channel, helps more people see, and it also helps you know when I upload new videos. And for the final time, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.